Right, 10 years I've been eating a plant-based diet. Does that make me an old man? Maybe it does, I don't know. Or should we say a veteran? Let's say a wise veteran in the plant-based nutrition space. This has absolutely changed my life. I know it's anecdotal and people wrestle with that, but it has absolutely changed my life. I get a little bit leaner, fitter, stronger, healthier. I would say my relationship with food actually still progressively every year gets a little bit better and better and better. And how much of that is down to plant-based nutrition, so much as good habits in overall and discipline and good habits in other areas of my life, it's very hard to say. But no doubt in my mind, it's been a massive contributing factor. So in this video, I want to share with you the biggest insight, actually, I think the biggest reflection I possibly have, or the most useful, I should say, reflection I possibly have after 10 years eating this way. So if you're at day 1 or day 100 or even 3 years in, I hope this will be some use to you from someone that is not an expert, but someone that is perhaps just a couple of steps ahead of you and drawing from that experience. Meal of the day, of course, I almost forgot meal of the day here. I was about to say oatmeal bowl. It's not actually, I ran out of oats today, so I'm using bulgur, which will be very strange to some people, but I just cook it in a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of maple syrup, and it makes it really delicious and sweet. And I was about to say creamy. I wouldn't say creamy so much, but it is tasty. I do prefer oats, but it is tasty. Blueberries, strawberries. I've got a tablespoon or so of hemp seeds there. I don't know if you'll make that out. And then a couple of walnuts and a extra drizzle of maple syrup there. We've also got a little protein shake, a little bit of protein on the side here, plant protein powder, which I know will appease, that's not why it's here, but this will appease the protein fruitcakes, the protein nutters that look at this and go, well, that's all carbs and a little bit of fat. Where's the protein? You're gonna die. I need exactly 33.3 grams of protein per meal for optimal protein synthesis every 2 to 3 hours. Like, these people are absolute nutters, guys. I've mentioned before, I'm okay with a lower protein or, adversely, a lower fat or lower carb meal because I know I will make it up later on in the day. So I've got my little shake here. Let's cut to the chase then. What's my big lesson, insight, reflection after 10 years eating this way? It's this. A plant-based diet works. A plant-based diet is highly effective when you do what the heck you want. Within reason, of course, because I know people could take that and run with it. I like eating junk food. That's not my suggestion. But when you think about what is going to be realistic and sustainable and enjoyable to you personally, not to the guy next door, not what your favorite YouTuber does, not what your MD necessarily advises, your favorite MD in the plant-based space necessarily advises. You know, and I want to stay within my remit here. This is not medical advice. And I want you to consult your physician, and I want you to seek the advice, the counsel of medical doctors. At the same time, though, I really think what has changed this for me, what has allowed me to do this for 10 plus years and not just survive, this is so cliche and cringe, but actually thrive, actually feel amazing, as I say, get a little bit leaner, gradually over time, fitter, stronger, healthier, better relationship with food each year that passes. I think what's unlocked the door to that for me is by marrying some kind of balance between what the top MDs in this space seem to be saying and how they sum up the meta-analyses on nutrition, but also what I like doing. And if you to picture this like a classic Venn diagram, you've got what the MDs are suggesting, what I like doing, and then somewhere in the middle, you know, that little overlapping, there's probably a word for it, that overlapping ventricle, let's call it, of the Venn diagram, that's my diet. That's the Ryan Adams diet. That is Slim and Sustain. That's how Slim and Sustain was born, right? Slim and Sustain is just conventional plant-based diet advice, discarding the things that I don't necessarily agree with, mixing in my, for what it's worth, my hot takes and my opinions on nutrition, mixing in my anecdotal observations about how my body responds to things, and very importantly, my likes and dislikes, any allergies or sensitivities I have. That's all Slim and Sustain is. I took the umbrella methodologies, philosophies of plant-based nutrition, whole foods plant-based nutrition, as you can find them online and in books and various resources, and I just got rid of what I don't like and put in what I do like. In short, that's what I did, right? So I liked a couple of examples here, actually. I wrote these down because I didn't want to miss these, and I started missing them. I started ignoring them. Number one, I liked the starch solution. I loved the esteemed, the late Dr. McDougall's work, but I personally observed that I felt a little bit better with a touch more fat and fruit in my diet than that nutrition methodology advises typically. You might be familiar with Nutritarian if you've been in plant-based circles here online for some time? Well, again, I like many of the principles there that Furman talks about, but I felt it was impossibly low calorie. I felt I feel to this day, it still promotes quite severe calorie deficits if you're not particularly calorie conscious. I respect, the great Dr. Greger's work, but truth be told, his meals never felt particularly fun to me and compelling and attractive to me personally. I felt they were missing the sex appeal for me to be motivated to continue eating this way every single day. The Daily Dozen, I think that's a wonderful idea, a wonderful tool, but do I want to eat those 12 foods every single day? No, not necessarily. I love the person I'm most closely aligned to, I would say, and I had the privilege of having him on my channel for an interview, didn't I, about this time last year. I love Dr. Neil Barnard's approach from PCRM, but I did want, at times, a little more protein. People are always like, why do you call it protein? Come on, you got to get the reference, guys, protein. But I loved his work, but I did want perhaps a little more protein. And in my 10 years eating this way, I think that's what I realized. There are some of these really popular methods, let's call them sub-diets under the greater plant-based umbrella here, but I needed to think about what was going to be realistic, sustainable, and nourishing for me. And so I have a very flexible, the biggest thing I've learned is to have a very flexible game plan. And that is not to say that I want to rationalize eating loads of unhealthy foods or foods that maybe MDs in this space would advise against. I don't intentionally want to do that, but I'm willing to gray the boundaries. I'm willing to fudge the boundaries a little bit of my personal game plan to make this fun and realistic, as I say, exciting and enjoyable and sustainable for me personally. Like the things I've noticed, like things like maple syrup, for example. There's a couple of MDs in the space that go, no, you shouldn't have maple syrup. It's refined still. Stevia, I'll make the argument it's very natural, but some people say, well, it's still ultra-processed. Like supplements, they're still ultra-processed. Like not everything that's processed is automatically bad, would be my argument to that. Creatine, I find it really odd that there's not many figureheads in the plant-based movement that are talking about creatine positively. I find that really strange, so I wanted to add some creatine to my diet. Some healthy fats, that I appreciate this is not everyone. Greger talks on this, I think, very, very sensibly, but there are some corners of the plant-based nutrition world to where healthy fats are banned, and the hot take is the fat you eat, the fat you wear, and I entirely disagree with that. I wanted to add a little bit of healthy fat within controlled amounts, so it wasn't skyrocketing my calories, because fat is very calorific, as you may or may not know. And so I wanted to add some, if it was even though in controlled amount, albeit in controlled amounts. I'm okay with tofu. I know there are some people that rally against soy. I'm okay with tofu and tempeh. As I say, I wanted a bit more protein. I do drink my calories. I've got the shake, I like smoothies. I'm a fan of juices. I don't have them all the time. I'm not a massive smoothie and juice person, but I do love having the option. So I do like to drink my calories, and I don't think just because a calorie is in liquid form, it's automatically considerably worse. I understand the chew factor argument and therefore how that might relate to some satisfaction. But inherently it being more fattening on its own, no, I don't make that argument. I don't want to do the 50-50 plate. I want to eat my diverse, if you're familiar with the 50-50 plate methodology, right? These are all strands, let's say sub-diets, again, under the plant-based umbrella. And there's elements of each of them I might quite like, but there was no one approach that really spoke to me, so I had to make my own. And I want you guys to know, I wasn't some nutrition expert. I'm not now. I didn't wake up one morning and go, I realize what I need to do. I need to make my own slim and sustain approach that is the best part of XYZ, and I don't like this. Like, this is something, 10 years. As I say, old man now, 10 years I've been doing this. Every year I was integrating the lessons. Every year I was learning more about, number one, I was improving my nutrition knowledge, and that's really, really important to say. I haven't just been going through the malaise, I've been improving my nutrition knowledge. Number two, I anecdotally observed how my body responded to certain foods and to certain things. And I use the science, which is perhaps overused nowadays, and no one trusts the science anymore after the last couple of years, but I certainly use that and what I am analyzing from research papers from my nitwit brain, I'm using that as a fundamental template and guideline, but I'm also considering, as I say, what I want to enjoy, and I'm watching, that was my original point, I'm watching how my body responds to certain things. Oh, that's interesting, I get a little bit more fullness from white rice than brown rice, even though brown rice is higher in fiber, and that's the reason why some people cite that they actually get more full from brown rice. So I'm a little bit contrarian on that, but that's a useful observation. Noticing those things. There's some folks, for example, that don't always get on with the cruciferous veggies and sort of putting a little pin in that in their mind and thinking, all right, maybe for now, right, I'm not going to use quite so many cruciferous veggies in my meals because it's causing a little bit of gas and bloat. Like adjusting to those things, anecdotally observing how your body responds. And just because your body responds badly to something, that doesn't mean the thing is necessarily bad, the food in question is necessarily bad for you. There might be a deeper layer of troubleshooting required. But you catch my drift, anecdotally observing, like, what do I respond really well to here? Oh, this food seems to like really lean me down incredibly effectively. Oats, that's one for me. When I eat lots of oats, I do notice myself getting leaner and leaner without changing anything else in my diet because of the fullness to calorie ratio that I personally respond very well to with oats. So that's an interesting observation for me. Another way that I did this over 10 years and realized, the kind of diet that I wanted to follow progressively is I discarded the idea that I needed the perfect diet. This was something in about year 1 and 2 that was a bit of work for me in my journey to let go of, but I discarded the idea about, having a perfect diet and started thinking more about what's going to be realistic. I want to do this for the long run. I feel incredible. I don't want to give up. I don't want this to just be like a fad diet for me. Oh, I'm doing the vegan thing for 6 months. I didn't want that. I wanted this to stay. So I started thinking, okay, I'm not going to shoot for perfect, but I'm going to shoot for realistic. And there'll be times where that pendulum needs to swing. There'll be times where I'm being what I think is too realistic, and actually I'm just excusing some really poor food choices, and I need the pendulum to swing back more towards the utopian plant-based, Puritan plant-based diet. But you catch my drift. Maybe it's this swinging pendulum, but I'm trying to find balance between those things, and I'm not setting myself up for some idea that I'm going to have the perfect Puritan diet that has every meal has precisely the right amount of, I mentioned protein earlier, but selenium, for example, or a source of fermented veggies, and every meal has a source of 2 cups of dark leafy greens and X amount of antioxidants. I'm going to lose that idea, and I'm just going to think about how can I stick to this, right? And then reap the rewards rather than it being so absurdly perfectionistic that I can't stick to it and reap any rewards for very long. In the short term, I might have better results because I'm being so Mr. Perfect. But over the long term, right, I'd rather do 95% great for 10 years than 100% great for 10 minutes. Maybe that's an extreme sort of metaphor for it. But this, over time, slowly, as I observed what I respond to, what I like and dislike, etc., lost the idea that I needed to be perfectionistic with my diet, observed what's happening on the scale, and then, of course, when I started Slim and Sustain, and I started helping you guys implement all these strategies that I'd learned for myself, that was then, on a massive scale, I was getting immense feedback about what people respond well to, and then integrating it into my diet. Like, I learned lessons from my clientele. It's not always just the other way around exclusively. And so that was brilliant. And so just getting that feedback going, and it allows me to be very flexible. Even to this day, there's times where I need to adjust my diet. And if I was too rigid with the perfect plant-based diet, I would never be able to stick to this very long. I would be out there eating the pizza I'd still be vegan, but I'd be eating the pizza and I'd be eating donuts and I'd be eating all sorts, rather than just giving myself that little bit of permission to be like, okay, you're having this problem. Maybe you're really busy right now. How can we cut a few corners? Maybe let's use a few more breaded products, a few more flour products for convenience at this time, right? Let's do some hummus sandwiches. Let's do some chickpea wraps. Like, these things are still really, really healthy if you purchase the right breaded products, of course. But those are corners cut that a lot of people would think that's treasonous, right? That's heresy in again, some of the more Puritan corners of the plant-based space. So excuse me as I keep going off piece, guys, so I'm trying to consult my notes and make sure that every minute of this is something useful rather than rambling, but I think I blew that one about 10 minutes back. I wrote something here about being dogmatic and really stubborn about the rules you're following, but there's times right now where, for example, last year there was a period where I needed, and I have a high-carb diet, moderately high-carb diet all year long, generally speaking anyway, but there was times where I actually needed a few more carbs because I was doing so much. It was before I left the UK, I was doing so much tennis, I was dialing back actually at that point the martial arts. My step count was over 12,000 per day on average, and I was doing 3 or 4 gym sessions a week, and some cardio on top of the strength training I was doing at the gym. And running, I was running last summer as well, actually twice a week, maybe, once to twice twice a week. And so I deemed, I need some more carbohydrates in this time. Years ago, I wouldn't have felt those signals from my body, or I wouldn't have the wherewithal to necessarily say, well, I'm doing all this exercise, I better increase my carbohydrate. Like, I didn't know that I needed to do that back then. And now, observing myself as a case study, knowing myself more and more with each year that passes, I know when I need to do certain things intuitively. I'm like, okay, maybe I need a few more calories, maybe I need some fewer calories in this period because I am a little bit more sedentary. Maybe it's the carbohydrates, maybe it's the protein that needs to, the ever-mentioned protein that needs a little bit of a boost at this time. I know those things. And like, maybe this is unrealistic. Maybe you're like, I'm so new to nutrition, Ryan. Thinking about all this stuff is very, very overwhelming. I get it. But that's why I say, still take the template. You're not trying to invent your own diet. Still take those umbrella principles. Take my stuff, by all means, if you resonate with my stuff and you feel it's what's right for you. But don't be so dogmatic about doing my stuff, about the slim and sustain approach, that you can't shift away from something about my approach that you don't enjoy or you don't agree with or your body doesn't respond particularly well to. Does that make sense? So, the stuff that I figured that works for me is things like having beans, lentils, and tofu. The rules like having beans, lentils, and tofu twice per day, tempeh twice per day, that's been amazing. Using fruit for the sweet cravings, especially something low calorie like berries and citrus fruits and melon. Whole grains and potatoes are my main carbohydrate sources, and I love them and I respond very well to those. What else do I love doing? What's another one of my philosophies that I'm always banging on about is I hate all these pretentious, fancy and elaborate recipes. I'm always ranting about this, aren't I, guys? I love instead the practical sort of plate and bowl templates where you know how to portion X, Y, Z. I love those because they're incredibly versatile. I've showed those in my videos before. Of course, I love Ryan's signature cereal bowl. My clients will be laughing as they watch this. It's a really simple little trick, but you mix two certain cereals. I won't reveal it. Maybe I have in the past anyway. But and then it's just the certain berry combinations you can do with that and the seeds you throw on and the plant meal. Oh my goodness, the Ryan signature cereal bowl, love it. The easy sandwiches and wraps, I mentioned these 5 minutes ago for lunches. Then the big, you guys know I love my big, diverse, those colorful plates and bowls. I couldn't do those necessarily every single meal, and I can't necessarily do those every single day, but 5 times per week I'll have one of those lovely looking bowls you see me do. And I love those really diverse bowls for dinner. Some avocado, nuts and seeds daily in controlled portions, as I say. Again, this is my whole approach. This is the whole slim and sustained shtick that I'm always banging on about. This is the way that I've discovered to make a plant-based diet realistic and sustainable for me. And I'm not claiming these are all my inventions, apart from the signature cereal bowl. That is my thing. That is my jam, guys. But I'm not claiming these are all my inventions. But I'm not the first person to say many of these things here or give many of these rules here. But some of them are my things. Some of them are, I'm not sure where I'm going with that. Small, if you're trying to lose fat, this is a big, you guys, if you've been following me for a while, you've heard me say this a million times. Small, moderate, conservative calorie deficit, not an aggressive or severe one that's going to be really unsustainable. And again, feed into that crazy crash and burn dieting. I've already mentioned, but maple, stevia, a bit of ketchup, hot sauce, these things are allowed on my particular approach, right? I don't get so needlessly, I think it is needlessly Puritan about having some of those more processed things. And they have a few little added, what some people call nasties. They have a couple of those things in, but I'm okay with it. Bending the rules without breaking them. Right, that's my attitude here. I'm trying to bend the rules so they, not with malice, but so it fits me, so it works for my goals and my lifestyle with that and my enjoyments. So rather than totally breaking the rules and just eating loads of vegan junk food and putting your middle finger up to the MDs and going, no thanks, I'm not doing all this whole plant foods nonsense. Just hand me the latest vegan burger. I know it's a bit scary to listen to that intuition, guys, but I implore you to do it. Often what feels right or what feels aligned, insert woo-woo word of choice, but what feels aligned, you can't always articulate it, but if there's something, when you sit down and make a meal, if you're going to eat it again, if you're going to enjoy eating that thing again, listen to those instincts. Okay, this is the kind of meal that will work for me. I like this, I don't like this, etc., etc. And I know it's hard to trust those things, and if you are new to this, you might be thinking, I don't feel I have any authority. I don't feel I should have the audacity to know what to eat and that sort of thing, and I do need to consult. I do need to take advice from experts, and that is right. I'm not going to offer a counter opinion to that. That is right. But all I would say is, yes, brilliant, but if you have lots of MDs saying maybe marginally different things, there'll be some things you resonate with more than others. And so take the best bits from various approaches, take what you know you enjoy and stick to those things. Don't keep eating a meal just because just because Dr. Neil Barnard said, this is a brilliant meal. If you don't like it, don't keep eating it. There are still other brilliant meals out there that you can get your hands on that you can try. So examples like, if you think I'm wrong about intermittent fasting, I love my breakfast, don't I? And I'm always saying I don't think intermittent fasting is necessary, or it's even wise when you already follow quite a low calorie diet like a plant-based diet anyway. I certainly don't think many women should do it. And when I say that, some people lose their stuff because they're like, I love intermittent fasting. That's fine, right? Do a plant-based approach with a little bit of intermittent fasting if you deem that appropriate, right? If you like my approach on the whole, but you don't feel good when you eat lots of those bready or flour products, that's fine. Do a plant-based diet without the bready or the floury products in such high quantities. Maybe you are a bit of a raw juice, a smoothie, a raw vegan-y type person. That's not my particular MO, but I still agree there are elements of that lifestyle that I think are absolutely brilliant. That's cool. Do a plant-based diet that's quite heavy in the juices and the smoothies. Take the best of everything. Take rather the best of the things that will allow you to be realistic, so you can do this for 10 plus years. You can do this for decades. And what I would say on this, just to give you peace of mind, because I know there is some, infighting is a strong word, but there's some conflicting opinion in the plant-based space, as every sort of nutrition community has. This is not just a vegan or a plant-based thing. Oh, they're all fighting each other. That is not what I see even remotely. It is very collaborative, but there is some conflicting info. And all I would say on this is, remember guys, they're only ever, in most cases, fighting about whole foods. So when you hear the fat you eat is the fat you wear versus actually nuts and seeds are wonderfully nutrient dense, maybe this is sort of typified by the nutrition versus starch illusion argument in that particular example. When you hear that argument and you think, well, I don't know what to believe now, they're arguing over bloody whole plant foods. Like, this is nuts, right? The MDs in this space, generally, we will agree, I didn't mean to say we, they will agree on 98%, 99% of advice, right? That is the overlap they will have. That is the amount of overlap they will have is somewhere in the region, I would suggest, of 98, 99, maybe even north, maybe even 99.9% perhaps. And they will disagree on some very, very minor things. And what they're disagreeing on in most cases is whole plant foods. And Furman saying, watch out for too many potatoes and whole grains. Like, that is, he's talking about potatoes and whole grains. We're not talking about burgers. We're not talking about Pop-Tarts. We're not talking about artificial sweeteners. Like, we're not talking about using loads of greasy oil or anything like that. We're talking about potatoes and whole grains. And we're arguing over walnuts. These little nutrient-rich beauties. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. It's still a walnut, guys. And if you eat it in calorie-appropriate portions to you, it most certainly will not stop your desire to lose fat. They're only fighting over whole foods. I think that's it. I'm going to consult my notes again, but yeah, I think that's it. That's all I've done in these 10 years is I've taken conventional plant-based diet advice and then I've molded it slightly to my likes. Nothing genius, nothing profound. I didn't invent it one day. As I said, this is 10 years worth of knowledge. All that shifted gradually over time has shifted and molded my diet based on my likes and dislikes, based on my constantly changing lifestyle and schedule. Like, my diet looks very different now to how it did when I was back visiting the UK over Christmas versus how it did when I was 5 months in Asia last year. Even within that Asia trip, I had like 5 different diets for the 3 months that I was in Bangkok versus when I was in China for a week versus when I was in Korea, when I was in Japan for 3. Like, my diet, Taiwan, then like my diet looked very different in each of those periods, but it's that reference experience and flexibility that allows me to pivot and adjust as I need to. And you'll get there. You won't have that in your head right now. You won't have that in your locker right now, but you will get there through time and experience. But it only will come with the permission, you giving yourself permission to be the designer and the auditor of your diet versus some stranger from the internet. By all means, take their well-advised templates, but just do that little bit of adjusting to you guys, and it's going to set you up with the sustainability, the longevity for this to be realistic for the long term. That's my advice. Hope this helps you out. 10 years. Let me enjoy this. Take care.